All right, folks, so we are in Exodus chapters 9 and 10, I'm pretty sure is where we are. I wanted to just briefly touch on where we were last time, just because I left you hanging with a little slide there at the end of the previous, or at the end of our previous session, talking about the first three judgments, and I showed you that slide that had the pattern of 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, bam, for the 10th. And also Pharaoh as the tempter and putting some stumbling blocks before Moshe, and possibly looking at patterns in the judgments, parallels in the judgments. So did anyone do any research in regards to that for this week? John did. You're a good student, John. We expect nothing less from the Netherlands. They must have a good public education system. So tell us, what did you come up with that was kind of interesting?
Only with that cheat sheet. I like the fact that the first three plagues were done mainly or through Aaron. And I don't know if it reads, this was kind of weird on what I read, that he did it via staff, and then somewhere else it said the staff for Moses. But then again, it is again those, I don't know what the English word is, the words that basically make it someone's possessiveness.
Yeah.
So,
like they say they were borrowing each other's staff or something.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then I like the number 3, of course, the first 3. Those were done by Aaron, the other 7 by Moses or through Moses. Also those Egyptian gods that were being mocked or mocking God, and God was mocking, of course, also the Egyptian gods. And it was kind of interesting, like one for healing, and of course then you get God who gives them boils, and the other one was for storms, Seth, for destruction, hail, and those type of things. I thought that was really interesting, especially the last one, the king of death, Osiris, and of course he kills the firstborn.
Yeah.
You know?
Very interesting stuff, huh?
Yeah, that was main, and then also here it says that who was exempt, the first 3 was Israel exempt, yes, and the rest, or was not exempt, and the last 7 they were exempt.
Right. Yeah, that's my understanding. Is that everybody's understanding about exemptions from these judgments? As Israel seems to have gone through the first 3, and that they did not, get exempted from the first 3, and that they did on the next 7. Very interesting stuff. Did you look at these statements by Pharaoh where he had talked with Moses about, making some compromises? Anybody notice those? Like the first one was in Exodus chapter 8, verse 25, where he's saying, stay here, but sacrifice. I kind of looked at that as, it was kind of an interesting statement because it made me think of, well, just stay in slavery, but worship your Elohim. And that to me reminds me of like saying, well, just stay in your sin, but worship the Father. It doesn't really work too well, If you're going to serve the Father, you've got to, no longer be a slave to sin, as Paul says, but become a slave to righteousness. You can't no longer living in sin, but I think there's a word picture there where he's saying, just stay here as my servants and serve your Elohims in the land here. Just don't go anywhere. But it's basically saying you remain as slaves, but worship your deity. Yeah, that's not gonna work real well because you can't.
There's a temptation to do so because now we off our back, we can kind of do what we want to do.
Yes.
We're tempted to take this, know.
Yeah, and I'm
it's
sure there
saying
might have been some who said, hey, man, here, we're doing hard work. We got food and water, and maybe he'll give us some freedoms.
Right.
It's like, but Moses does not succumb to the temptation. He says, no, absolutely not. We're getting out of here. And then, of course, the second one is, that he tempts Moses in verse 28. Right after that, he says, okay, go and sacrifice, but don't go too far away. Just don't go 3 days into the wilderness. Maybe go, half a day or something. Just go down the road a little ways. And I mean, that to me kind of is like a word picture of saying, look, you can serve your Elohim, but don't go too far. I mean, that's like, don't get too crazy. Nobody likes a religious person. Don't.
He was worried that he would lose all those people.
I think
All
absolutely.
his-
Yeah, from Pharaoh's perspective, I mean, he's losing the workforce. I mean, obviously, if you've had slaves for a couple of hundred years running the economy, you lose all your slaves in one fell swoop. That destroys the entire economy of the country. Where are you who's going to do the work? The Egyptians? They've become pampered, and they're enjoying life, with somebody else to do the hard work. That is not a situation that anybody's looking forward to in Egypt, I don't think. And of course, the Hebrew slaves are saying, well, Moses, of course, fights this temptation and says, no, we're going 3 days into the wilderness. So watch for these next two, because there's 4 times that he tempts Moses, and these next two, it becomes a little more obvious as well. He's willing to give a little bit more, and the temptation may have become even stronger on the part of the Hebrews saying, hey, that sounds like a pretty good deal, Moses. Maybe we should take this. So just watch out for that. And we'll deal more with the judgments because we're going into the next 3. And then next week, we'll go into the actual Passover sacrifice and the death of the firstborn. I don't believe we're going to get to that one today. So we're going to we did the first 3, and then we'll do the next 6 tonight. I think we'll get really close to those. So I'm going to move forward just a little bit. This is the slide that I had shown you previously where you have blood, frogs, and lice. The first two announced. This is what I'm going to do. And then the third one, bam, just happens. No warning, no foreshadowing, nothing like that. It just happens. And did you think about it all this week, looking at how blood, frogs, and lice is somehow reflected in this statement, I am Elohim, and how maybe swarms of some kind, animal plague that killed all of the cattle and boils is somehow reflective of this statement, I am Elohim in the midst of the land, and possibly how hail and fire and locusts and darkness is somehow reflective of there is none like me in the entire earth. Do you think there's any significance to those statements that group those judgments together? Anybody find anything interesting in that regard?
Not
Okay.
really.
I don't. It's a tough one.
Overlapped quite a bit.
They do kind of overlap. I mean, you can look at blood and frogs and lice. Well, frogs and lice kind of seem to go together in that they're animals or creatures of some kind. But blood, I'm not sure how that works in. I know that you can go to Sephariah.com or look at not the Gematria, but the Talmud, the Mishnah, the Targums on Sephariah.com, and the Hebrew commentators have lots of spectacular and interesting things going on with this passage. Whether you can give them any countenance is up to you, obviously, but some of it's pretty fantastic.
Last statement there about there's none like me in the entire earth.
Mm-hmm.
We had kind of talked about this a little bit over the phone, but some of these seem like reverse creation.
Yeah.
So this darkness is the same darkness that was in Genesis before the light and the dark were separated.
Yes, that is.
And the hail, fire, and the locusts are taking out crops that,
Yeah, that is one of the things that the rabbis brought up in these commentaries, is that if you look at these in a certain light, this is like creation in reverse. It's like the creation is coming undone. It's very interesting, and you can certainly see some parallels there.
There's also in Isaiah 45:5. There's some interesting things about that, especially the last statement, but also in reverse order in a way.
Yeah, yeah. So there's lots and lots of very deeper meanings to these plagues, and of course we've talked about a little bit about how these plagues represent judgments on a false deity of Egypt. And it is not a judgment against the people of Egypt or anything like that. He's destroying the false deities of Egypt. And we talked about how if you're clinging on to a false deity and the one and true Elohim comes along to wipe out false deities and you're holding on tight, you might get hurt. So I'm gonna just leave that with your thoughts, because there's so much research that you can do online, and we could probably talk about this all night long and not really get anywhere. We'd just be speculating endlessly. But there's a lot of really interesting and deep things about these plagues that are just incredibly deep. But I'll leave that to you to do some homework maybe, and I know that I can count on John, because he's a good student. And maybe Mike. Maybe Mike.
Last week, in the chapters we read, there were 2 times where Moses was to rise early and meet Pharaoh in the water.
Yeah.
I don't know if anybody picked up on anything there, the connections there.
Well, hold on to that thought, because it happens again coming up, and I did take note of that. And just remember that question. It's because he tells Moses to get up early in the morning and confront Pharaoh, and just have that in the back of your mind. I don't have anything to contribute right now, but it is coming up, so let's hold on to that. Maybe think about that as we get to it, because I think there might be something there. Do you have ideas?
Well, some of the scripture that talks about rising early to meet with God, and Moses is representing God in this picture, right? He's the voice of God. And,
sure.
I think there's quite a bit of reference to water being the word sometimes too, and so it's almost like he's going and meeting Pharaoh as God in the water and trying to persuade him to move in the right direction, and then his heart gets restored. God restores his heart, repairs his heart again. They're back at it. I don't really know, but just kind of.
Yeah. Well, keep that in mind.
Imagery there.
Yeah, keep that in mind. We're going to come to that again in just a few. So let's get started with the new text for this week, which is in Exodus 9, verses 1 through 7. So Yehovah said to Moses, "Enter to Pharaoh and speak to him. Thus says Yehovah, Elohim of the Hebrews, dismiss my people, that they may serve me. For if you refuse to dismiss them, and you still are holding fast to them, behold, the hand of Yehovah is coming to be on your cattle which are in the field, on the horses, on the donkeys, on the camels, on the herd, and on the flock, with an exceedingly heavy plague. Yet Yehovah will distinguish between the cattle of Israel and the cattle of Egypt. Not a thing shall die of all belonging to the sons of Israel." So Yehovah made an appointment, saying, "Tomorrow Yehovah will do this thing in the land." And Yehovah did this thing on the morrow. All the cattle of the Egyptians died, yet the cattle of the sons of Israel, not one died. Then Pharaoh sent, and behold, not even one had died from the cattle of Israel. Yet the heart of Pharaoh gloried, and he did not dismiss the people. Now, relating this to this fifth plague, how would the death of the death of the animals of Egypt be a judgment against a false deity of Egypt. Do you have any ideas? What is who is this Egyptian deity that is being smitten by cows being killed and horses and such? Sierra, you really look like you want to say something.
No idea. I don't know about the gods of Egypt, so.
What do you got, John? You got something on your paper there?
They say Apis.
Apis, the bull?
Yeah, very good. And referred bull, or all their sacred bulls or cows.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Hathor, they also say that one is related. But
Yeah. So yeah, I know that it's not just the India that has a sacred cow, but definitely in Egypt. I think we had talked about
India.
Yeah, I think somebody brought up India last time. I mean, the Hindus hold cows to be sacred for sure. And I know that the Egyptians hold the sheep, their god Akhenaten or Aten or whatever his name is, as a sheep god, ram god or whatever. This type of animistic culture, is very, very similar to, you can even see this in Native American culture, where they invest an animal with a spirit of some kind and revere the animal. And now, of course, it seems like the ancient peoples took that a bit further. But do you see that relating to anything today? Is that relevant today?
Animals above human life.
There are some people, yes, on this planet today who would really, I think, broach or cross that line of worshiping animals or assigning more significance to animals than human life.
Well, you see it in social media where people get real upset about dogs being abused or not having, being abandoned.
Well,
When the same
nobody
thing is
wants to see a
happening-
dog
No,
abandoned.
but the same thing that's happening to people, and yet all their outrage is about what's happening to animals
Fair point.
as opposed to,
Fair point, yeah.
and no outrage is coming out of them about the people here.
Yeah.
Especially children.
Yeah. I mean, I think you guys probably saw, I think it was last week maybe, somebody took a dolphin or a small shark out of the water and they passed it around this huge crowd on the beach and everybody took a selfie with it and it died. And then some other guy this week had a small shark swimming in the shallows and he grabbed it and pulled it out of the water and had his buddy take a picture with it and then he put it back. Now that one lived, but yeah, I mean, people get outraged about the unethical treatment of animals, and I certainly do too. But I think the comparison is valid when you say, well, where's all the outrage for the way people and humans are being treated? I think that there should be more balance, but I don't have a problem with people showing outrage about the mistreatment of animals because it outrages me as well. But there should be some outrage about people being treated poorly, and there just doesn't seem to be, which is kind of weird. So I think that does relate to today. Did you want to,
I
Anna?
just have a thought. Is it also related to the golden calf that they made?
Yeah, that's an interesting one, and I don't. What do you think?
I'm just trying to look up in the meantime if there is a connection, but I can't find it so far. But I just
Yeah, it's a giant puzzle to me about how they ended up making a golden calf. We're coming to that, but that one is a really strange one, and I don't know, on so many different levels.
because it was obviously a god of
Yeah, it's not like they chose some random animal that nobody had assigned to a god before. So yeah, that is a little strange. I don't know how that would be connected to this necessarily, but it does seem weird that they would have even done that. Very strange indeed. How would you explain the distinction that is made between the Egyptians and the Hebrews in regards to these animals? Why did he start here to show a distinction? I mean, they had to go through the land being filled with blood instead of water for 7 days. They had to go through the frogs and the lice, but why is there a distinction made with the animals? Have any ideas about that? Yes?
one of the reasons he said, hey, we have to go out, we have to worship God, and we need animals to do that.
Good point.
So the
He's
Passover
preserving their
was-
animals so that they can
Right.
make sacrifice.
Do you think the livestock was different? Like sheep?
Unmixed?
The Hebrews?
Cheap?
Yeah, sheep.
Lambs and sheep and then maybe
Oh,
cattle,
I see what you're saying.
because they, they didn't like the idea of shepherds.
Yeah, yeah.
That's what I was gonna go to, that it was said that to the Egyptians, herding sheep and that was like.
That was
something
detestable.
that was below them, and that's something the Hebrews would do. So
Yeah.
I'm sure the Hebrews had a lot of sheep.
Yeah,
That
yeah.
also brought up the idea that Egyptians had that view of them, that all their livestock dies off, is sick and dies, and then all these things that they've been saying terrible about Jews.
Right.
The Hebrews is basically a way that well, I guess maybe we might be wrong about that. I would start maybe question their perspective on how they looked at it before. It's like this is trash, and you guys are trash for being shepherds of it. Well, now all their livestock dead. The
Yeah.
Hebrews are all healthy. and
Yep.
good.
Well, I think you've kind of hit on a point there. That in just a little while, our Father says, I am doing this so that you, the Egyptians, will know that I am Yehovah. The whole world will know that I am Yehovah because of what I have done here today. And so I think that's a good point. And yes, of course, and on a practical level, they needed the cattle, to go and make sacrifice. So yeah, I think those are good, valid arguments.
Question is an English question. What does mean? What do they mean with verse number 7? Then Pharaoh sent. That's such a random statement. What does that mean?
Oh, that, let me just ask here, why do you believe that the text indicates that Pharaoh sent investigators to check out the results of this judgment? And he sent his servants to the land where the Israelites were staying to see if, because they had been warned by Moses, Yehovah is going to destroy all your cattle, but not a single animal of the Hebrews will die. And he actually sent investigators to see if that was true. And they came back and reported to him, this is true. Not a single animal in the land of the Hebrews has died. But it says he did not dismiss the people. Why do you think that he actually sent someone to investigate this?
I feel like it kind of caters to the idea of like he has probably genuine wonder and genuine fear, but God restores his strength, and eventually he just goes back to
His same old attitude.
same of that.
Yeah, I think that he did have a genuine sense of wonder. It's like, wow, that's seriously, go and check that out. Did that actually happen? But yeah, they come back and say, yeah, all of our animals are dead and not even one of their dogs died. So it's like, yeah, that would have presented a serious, wow.
Well, yeah, the thing is, being a non-believer or whatever his gods would do, he figures, just a disease hit everything.
Sure. Yeah, but this is
Some-
definitive.
Some fluke disease that.
Yeah, this isn't
must have
some
got it.
fluke. This is, very divisive. It's real cut and dried. So I think that's a good sign to him that something serious is taking place here. Now, this doesn't say anything about the magicians or the enchanters of Egypt trying to replicate this plague. Hey, we also can kill some
They're already
animals.
dead.
They're already
They're all
dead.
dead.
Yeah.
What are they gonna do?
Yeah, so
Maybe they did try, but they couldn't. Maybe that's why they had them go investigate, because they were trying to kill some of the sheep and they wanted to keep
Yeah.
over. Like, all right.
Why,
Yeah.
why didn't he ask his magicians to restore the animals?
Oh, that would have been good,
You
wouldn't it?
guys are good, restore them. Show
Yeah,
them what
raise
to do.
these animals back to life. That would have been an excellent indication, wouldn't it, huh?
Maybe they tried, but it's not working.
Yeah, it didn't work out that way. All right, so I'm moving forward just a little bit to Exodus 9, 8 through 12. So Yehovah said to Moses and to Aaron, "Take for yourselves both of your hands full of soot from a kiln, and Moses will sprinkle it towards the heavens before the eyes of Pharaoh, and it will become powder over all the land of Egypt. Then there will come to be on human and on beast boils budding out into pustules in all the land of Egypt. So they took the soot from a kiln and stood before Pharaoh. And Moses sprinkled it toward the heavens, and there came to be boils budding out into pustules on human and on beast. Now the sacred scribes were unable to stand before Moses in view of the boils, for the boil came to be on the sacred scribes and on all Egypt. Yet Yehovah made the heart of Pharaoh steadfast, so that he did not hearken to them, just as Yehovah had spoken to Moses. Let's start with the simple premise once more. How would you see these boils as an affront to a deity of Egypt? Is there something related to an Egyptian god here? Sierra?
Last week we talked a lot about how they're so image focused, so I mean, I wouldn't want to go walk around with boils all over me.
Yeah, unclean.
Very,
Yeah, absolutely.
very,
Did the Hebrews get boils too?
No, it does not say that they did. It does not specifically say that there was a distinction made, but tradition teaches, and you can attach to that whatever you want, that the next 7 plagues do not affect the Hebrews.
I mean, it says all of Egypt.
Moses didn't need
Yeah, Moses didn't have any boils, and it doesn't say that the Israelites did. I presume that they did not. But how might a boil being across the people be some kind of a judgment on a god?
Yeah, that's one of their God, what they believe in God for healing. So the opposite is of course disease.
Yeah.
So I think Yahweh is again making fun with that one.
Mm-hmm.
Sekhmet.
Sekhmet, yeah.
Yes.
What is that?
That one is Sekhmet, the goddess with power to heal. Yeah, and Serapis, another healing god.
Serapis, yeah.
Serapis.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Keith, did you want to throw something in there?
Well, the fact that mentioned that so the 5th one was a disease-related one, and this is a disease-related one.
Yes. Disease on cattle, disease on
Let me
humans.
show you how to do your cattle. Now I'm going to
Mhm.
show you what I can do with you.
Yeah. Yeah, I see, which is a logical progression. You want to worship beasts? I'll plague your beasts. You want to worship your own bodies and your beauty and your cleanliness and, your shaved heads and all that stuff? Well, we can...
Him taking, I mean, when you look at how he did this plague, the others, he did the rod.
Yeah, dust.
This one, he takes soot from a kiln and throws it in the sky.
That's
Yes.
right.
Yes.
Yeah.
What- That's ash. Now, this is interesting. If you look at the Hebrew word for soot from a kiln, it actually seems to talk about quicklime, which is something I'll discuss with you in just a moment. What's that? Yeah. Well, check this out. It's kind of interesting. Well, first of all, I'll just throw out here that there was an interesting ceremony that the Egyptians did to worship their false Elohim, Typhon. They would burn red bulls.
Does this sound familiar now?
Yes, they would burn red bulls and throw the ashes up in the air. And it was the tradition, or the mythology is, that if the ashes touched you, that you would have wellness and health. So I thought that was very interesting in regards to the fact that we have a very mysterious sacrifice, coming up here that talks about the red heifer.
What's that for?
Well, that's a very mysterious one. I'm talking about our
Yeah, I know,
Elohim
but-
doing the red heifer sacrifice for purity, for the waters of purification. Yes. So this is kind of interesting that these Egyptians worship some god called Typhon with a red bull and threw the ashes up in the air. And
Red Bull.
a cow that is colored red.
Oh,
Red-haired. Yeah, sorry, not energy drink. Well, also, now have you guys heard of Imhotep? Some people, in some traditions, Imhotep was actually Joseph. Some people teach that Imhotep was Joseph.
That was his name.
It's in the movie. Yeah.
That was the name he was given in the movie.
So this, these ashes that they got from the furnace, are you thinking that it was the animals that had died previously?
No, but that's an interesting question, but no, that's not what I was going to say. You hold on to that, though, because that's an interesting thought. What I was actually thinking, and I had saw some commentary on this, is that the soot from a kiln, the Hebrew words there are very peculiar, it seemed, and that this soot from the kiln was somehow related to the firing of bricks. Now, they would be firing bricks in the kiln, especially the bricks that the Hebrews were making to build these cities. So that's very interesting, because your slave labor is building your great monuments. You are obviously worshiping yourselves. You've got monuments built to yourselves and all of your gods. You've got these giant pyramids and sphinxes and all kinds of weird, sculptures that are gigantic, and you obviously are very proud of your building edifices, He's like, so I just thought that was interesting that some of the Hebrew commentaries related soot from a kiln to baking bricks. And I thought, I wonder if that's some type of a judgment for the pride that they were showing in their ability to build huge, lasting monuments to their own greatness. And that this plague came upon them. It wasn't upon an animal or a crop or anything, it was personal. And so I thought that was very interesting. And also that it would have been an affront to this man god Imhotep, because they worshipped this Imhotep person as a god of healing. Now, some people have said that Imhotep is representative of Joseph. That is certainly possible. They could have deified Joseph as a god-man or something. That's certainly possible. But this, them revering Imhotep as a human god of Egyptian medicine would have been an affront to him, where the whole population is breaking out with boils and pustules that cannot be healed. There's some interesting connections to this.
It's weird that we use Joseph as a healer, though. He's obviously very important, but very definitively not really a healer. He was a provider and not a healer. I don't know, that's weird to put that on it.
Yeah.
I thought Imhotep rung the bell for my art history classes. He is the earliest known architect to be named.
He's also one of the earliest known doctors who wrote treatises on medicine.
So you're
He's a very
building.
Yeah. Well, there's some serious, interesting connections to Imhotep. The guy was very significant in Egyptian history. And, of course, some people say he is Joseph, which would make sense. Obviously, Joseph was a special kind of fellow there in Egypt.
We don't know that.
He had tremendous wisdom. None of his... They ascribe to him, like Herodotus, one of the ancient historians, ascribes to Imhotep books about architecture and biology. None of those texts are extant anymore. They don't exist, but they are referenced by ancient historians. So they did at one time. Probably burned up with the Library of Alexandria, for all I know.
He is one of the few Egyptian gods other than pharaohs who is an actual real person. The doctor, architect, high priest, scribe, and vizier.
Isn't that interesting? It seems it could be related to Joseph.
I misspoke. Joseph was Zaphanath.
Zaphanath Paneah.
Zaphanath.
Yes,
That's
right.
what he was.
Right.
Zaphanath.
2660s BC.
As far as radiocarbon dating, which is notoriously unreliable. So, who knows? I just wanted you to take note, and I don't want to drive this point really, too deep, because we've talked about this before, but notice, you might want to just take note in your text of this Hebrew word for steadfast in verse 12, where it says that Yehovah made the heart of Pharaoh steadfast, in relation to when it says in the previous section in verse 7, when it says that Pharaoh's heart gloried. There is a difference there. And just take note of those two words, because what the Hebrew word that says that Yehovah made the heart of Pharaoh steadfast, does anyone have their little Hebrew translation there that you can take a look at real quick? Because I think you'll see something interesting there. If you want to start with chapter 9, verse 12, made the heart steadfast is chazak. He's to strengthen, prevail, be strong, become courageous. This is what Yehovah did to the heart of Pharaoh. Strengthened it, prevailed over it, hardened it, become strong, helped him to be strong and courageous. That doesn't seem to jive with what many of us think, is that Yehovah made Pharaoh stubborn and changed his heart. This is literally, this Hebrew word here for he strengthened his heart is he gave him strength, which is very interesting compared to in verse 7 in the previous section, where it says that Pharaoh gloried in his heart. He was proud and prideful in his own heart and lifted himself above Yehovah. Remember also that this guy thinks that he is a god. That's a tough situation to be in. when our Elohim is judging the gods of Egypt, that's going to be tough for him.
That may be why he had that. He's kind of glorified at one point. I mean, you can be steadfast as much as you want, but it throws you down the dumps. You're like, okay, I'm getting through this. But when you glorify it, then okay, yeah, I'm getting through this, and now I feel really good. Gets you right back in the game, like you back up on.
Yeah, that's the way I think of it. And some of the texts certainly indicate that, is that he was maybe willing to give in the towel, but Yehovah gave him strength to keep fighting.
I think it's in chapter 7, verse 3, where the word harden is the only place where it actually is like stiffened, or in the context that a lot of us take it.
Yes, yeah, that is kasha, to be hard, severe, fierce, be harsh. So yeah, that does seem to indicate that Yehovah will cause Pharaoh's heart to be firm and hard. So yeah, that does seem to indicate. So it can go both ways. There's more than one little simple thing going on here.
The repair or strengthen was used like 12 different times throughout this section.
Yeah, interesting, isn't it?
Yeah.
What do you imagine is meant by the scribes could not stand before Moses because of the oils? What, do they got boils on their feet and they can't stand up? What do you imagine here? Shame. I think that's a good point. It certainly could be a big part of it. They could not stand before Moses because of the boils. Any other ideas on that? I think shame is a good one.
Could be fear as well.
It could be fear. Yeah. Yeah.
Both rupturing all over, and they're looking at him, and he's just sitting there going, "Wow, that was pretty rough." We gotta get out of here. This is
You guys are hurting, man.
He's done like 6 other things there. This is just.
Nick?
So is it indicated that that plague was only for the Egyptians either? It doesn't say it in the text.
It doesn't.
Here,
Most
so-
people assume that, and I don't know whether it's safe to assume that. It certainly could be. I don't know.
Because I had a thought after we talked about the cattle and why is this the first plague that was only on the Egyptians. And cattle was considered the belongings of the Israelite or of the people.
Mm.
And so God didn't punish his people personally, nor their belongings that belong to them.
Mhm.
Whereas everything else, frogs or hail or water,
Yeah.
is kind of environmental law.
You know, yeah, I wonder about that. I actually thought about that, and I wondered, did Pharaoh allow the Israelites to keep those cattle? Did he confiscate them and say, you take care of them, but they actually belong to me? I don't know. It would go in line with anything that, remember, Jacob taking care of Laban's sheep, every time he was taking care of something, it just flourished. And the same thing with Joseph. Anything he touched turned to gold. Everything that he was handling just multiplied and was great. But I mean, is it possible? Well, I don't know though, because you've got in just a little while, Pharaoh saying to Moses, okay, you can go, but who are you going with? And we're like, we're taking everything, our cattle. So I presume that is correct, that they did belong
And
to
so
them.
that's why, and with the boils on their body, then that would be also something that directly affects the people where they belong. So I would assume that it was only on the Egyptians, but it's not so clear.
Yeah, it's not terribly clear, but I could understand. I don't know. Everybody just assumes that the plagues from here on out did not affect the
So it
Hebrews.
wells around all the magicians and the Egyptians.
Yeah. Doesn't say the Hebrews. Right.
Kind of does specifically state.
Yeah, it states who it is on. Right. Keith?
Okay, so I just want to do like a grammar check here, because mine
Grammar
says
check.
magicians could not compete with Moses because they had boils like all the other Egyptians. So that word that you're using as stand,
Oh,
what does the
okay.
Hebrew word actually mean? Because in here they translate it as compete.
Yeah, I like that. That's good. They could not stand. To stand, remain, endure, or take a stand. That's the Hebrew word amad. That's an interesting idea, Keith, that they could not stand up to this power.
Right.
That's an interesting observation. Instead of literally standing up on their feet or something. Yeah, that makes sense. They couldn't stand in the face of Moses. This power of our Elohim is
So great.
stunning to
Let
them.
me reiterate again, he obviously doesn't have boils on.
Yeah.
You're looking at
Yeah.
it. Realizing
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to move forward to Exodus 9, verses 13 through 17, where Yahweh says to Moses, "Rise early in the morning, station yourself before Pharaoh, and say to him, Thus says Yahweh, Elohim of the Hebrews, dismiss my people, that they may serve me. For at this time I am sending all my strokes onto your heart and your servants and your people, in order that you shall know that there is no one such as me in the entire earth. For by now I could have put forth my hand and smitten you and your people with the plagues, so that you were suppressed from the land. However, for this reason I keep you standing, in order to make you see my strength, and that my name may be related in the entire earth. Still you are heaping up yourself against my people, so as not to dismiss them." This is a really, really interesting couple of statements here. First, we have this specific timing about when Moses is supposed to do this. So, rising early to station himself before Pharaoh. And I mentioned this previously, Mike, where you were asking about that. I've got this one scripture on the back of my mind, and I don't know where it's coming from, but it talks about rising early. Does anyone know where that is?
I thought there was one in it's Psalm 5:3
I thought it might have been a psalm.
that you will hear my voice in the morning.
Mm.
And I will set, I will set myself before you in the morning, and I will look up, for you are not a God enjoying wickedness, nor shall evil live in your presence.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay. Do you see a connection there, or some things that can be connected to the significance of Moses rising early in the morning?
The only thing that I've been able to really connect to it is just that it seems like some of the other, I know there's another one other than Psalm. I can't remember where.
Genesis
where it was.
also,
Was it?
about Abraham,
Rising.
he rises early, take his donkey.
In Psalm 119, verse 147, it says, I rise before dawn and cry for help. Psalm 5:3, that's, I think, the one you mentioned.
It seems like that's a time for clear communication.
Mm.
I don't know if that has any significance.
Well, it's the Genesis of the day, right? I mean, it's like
Yeah, the beginning
it's
of the
Genesis and everything. I mean, it's the
Yeah.
Genesis and the microcosm of the day is that's the beginning.
Look at you with big words.
Yeah, it's still, you know.
You're one to talk down.
I know, isn't that
They
Well-
also came to the grave of Yeshua early in the morning. But
Yes, they
I
did.
still try to find the.
Yes, they did.
I don't know how that could be related.
Yeah, that's with early in the morning on the first day of the week in Mark 16:2. Here's an interesting one in Exodus chapter 34, verse 4. It says that Moses cut the 2 tablets of stone like the first that had been smashed, and he rose early in the morning and went up to Mount Sinai. There's a couple of interesting verses there, and I know we're speculating, and I don't want to go wild with speculation, but I just wondered if there was something significant about him rising early in the morning. But I don't want to belabor that too much. Note how I had previously mentioned to you last week about how this plague that is coming is the only one that is actually called a plague, and this next one that is coming is characterized in a very strong language, saying that at this time I am sending all my strokes. Something big is coming with this next plague. And he says that it is, note the specific purpose of this plague that is coming, so that you will know, and the whole earth will know, my name will be known in all the earth. I mean, remember Rahab, the potter, Rahab the harlot, sorry, just kidding. Rahab in the city of Jericho, when Joshua came to destroy that place and the spies went in there, how much longer was that than this event? How far removed in time?
Can you say that again?
Yeah, how much time had elapsed between these judgments that the Father did in Egypt and the time that Joshua was entering the land with the spies? And Rahab said, we have heard about everything that your Elohim has done. How much time has
40
passed?
years?
40 some odd years. Now, either this is a really old and haggard harlot, or these stories about this, what had happened in Egypt, had been circulating around this region for some time. I mean, she must have been a kid. Either that or she's really old. Maybe she's running the brothel. I don't know, but I'm just saying she knows. She could be the madam of the brothel. I'm not saying that, but what I am saying is she knows, and she is reporting to the spies that the whole land is melting for fear because of what had happened 40 years before. So this thing here, I'm doing this so that you will know my strength, my vigor, and that my name will be related in the entire earth. That definitely is true. And today I think that what happened in Egypt is a big part of why everyone still knows this. I mean, you've got the creation story of different cultures is so parallel to the one that Moses wrote, like the Epic of Gilgamesh and stuff like that, that is clearly what happened here in Egypt made a very large impression upon the entire earth. And it
You think she
is.
was wondering where they were for 40 years?
Yeah, she might have been. It's like, it took you 40 years to get here, but boy, we're terrified that you're here. But yeah, what happened to you guys? You were wandering around the desert for a while. But just note that this 7th plague, I don't think it's accidental that this is the 7th judgment, which is actually referred to as a plague, in which he says, all my strokes, and it's got all these additional information attached to it, what purpose, and here's the reason that I'm doing this. I don't think that's incidental. So let's look at this next plague when we move forward to verses 18 through 21. Behold me causing it to rain about this time tomorrow, and exceedingly heavy hail, such as has not come in Egypt from the day of her founding until now. And now send, bring your cattle under strong shelter, and all that you have in the field. Every human and beast which is found in the field, and is not gathered towards the house, on them the hail will descend, and they shall die. The one fearful of the word of Yehovah among the servants of Pharaoh made his servants and his cattle flee to the houses. Yet he who was not setting his heart on the word of Yehovah forsook his servants and his cattle in the field. Powerful, powerful statement right there. We got some really interesting stuff going on. Note, first of all, that this is the first of the plagues which potentially and for sure causes death to humans. Doesn't say anything about the plague of cattle infecting humans and anybody dying. It doesn't say that the boils caused anybody to die. It was painful sores and such. But this is the plague that will kill you. This is the first one that comes that will cause death. And also that a way of escape is included in the warning. And why do you think that this additional instruction is given? Is this Elohim's mercy and grace being extended?
Belief, unbelief.
Yeah, belief, unbelief. This is, I'm giving you an opportunity to demonstrate your belief or unbelief. Now, how are we going to do that?
You should put them in your cover.
Yeah.
Do something. If you believe what I'm doing and what I'm saying here, you better take action because your life depends upon it.
Well, if you were part of these people and you've already experienced, we're on the 7th plague now. I mean, he's pretty good with his word. Everything so far has happened. You're
Yes.
starting to say, Pharaoh, you're an idiot. We're believing what's
Right.
happening here. We're going to listen.
Well, and this is the first time that he has actually offered a way of escape.
Right.
That's very interesting. The 7th plague comes. The one that's called a plague that has all this additional significance wrapped in it is the one that he also gives a way of escape and gives a warning and saying, listen, this one's coming, and if you don't get out of the way and take some type of corrective action, it will kill you. And it says specifically that the one who was not setting his heart on the word of Yehovah, the one who did not listen, forgot about it. It didn't care or something.
So this was given to Pharaoh,
Yeah.
but do you think this way out was trickled down to anybody else?
I certainly believe so. Yes, I think that to me, the picture in my mind that I'm looking at is that this spread like wildfire. I mean, this is the hot buzz around town, And when the Pharaoh and all of his advisors are standing there, and Moses is giving this instruction, I have a picture in my mind. As soon as Moses is done speaking, they scatter like cockroaches. The ones who fear Yehovah are running to get their cattle and their goods into the house to protect themselves, and the word spreads. That's my vision of what's happening here, Keith.
He gave him a whole day warning.
Yes, he
It's
did.
a whole day. So you're right. As soon as everybody in the court heard,
I imagine they were running.
and they left, they had a whole day because this time tomorrow,
Yeah.
the hailstorm's going to happen. So
Right.
they had a day to prepare those who believed that it was going to happen.
I can't imagine why somebody would say, I'm not doing it. I mean, you've seen what has happened here. This is obviously going to happen, Sierra.
Well, there's significance in those who, were set on hearing the word of Yehovah, how that's what we need to be focused on,
Yeah, absolutely. He is providing a way of escape, and I think that's the whole reason that we are here, guys, is because we are hearing the way of escape, and he is saying, listen, do something. Save yourself. I've given you instructions on how you can save yourself. Purify yourself from the world. Do
It was
not...
only for the Egyptians, right? Not
No,
for-
no, no. Well, no, this is for everyone.
No, it said the hail would come down in Goshen.
Oh, yeah, okay,
Yeah,
so the hail didn't come down in Goshen. But do you think that maybe, this is a good question. Do you think that maybe the Hebrews also took their cattle inside? Just as a just as a precautionary measure? I would have. I mean, he didn't specifically say that there would not be hail in the land of Goshen. He didn't specifically say that was going to happen. So, I mean, if I would have been there, I would have been bringing my animals and my family into shelter.
So what animals did they have to bring in? I was reading it this morning.
Excellent
And
question.
I was like, well, I thought we just got them all killed off. So
Yes,
where
and
are
you know,
they?
here is something to consider.
Cats.
Here is something to consider. Two different options that I'm going to throw at you, and you can decide. You can also do some more research and find out. A, when the Torah talks about all, it does not necessarily mean every single animal. It means a lot. Second option is that time has passed. That this does not necessarily mean that, I mean, and people have this idea in their minds, and Mike and I talked about this in relation to the crop stuff that's coming up in a little while, that this doesn't necessarily have happened like one day there's a plague, and then a couple days later there's another plague, and all this whole thing is over in like a month. This could have happened over a period of a year, 2 years, 3 years, or could it be 3.5 years? Could it be 7 years? Don't know. There's no indication.
In the spirit of Andy and Stacy.
In the spirit of Andy and Stacy.
Saying things as parables, if you read this, every human and beast which is found in the field and not gathered toward the house.
What does that remind you of? What does the field represent?
World.
The world. What does the house represent?
Kingdom.
The kingdom.
And I'm looking at these seventh trumpet, seventh bowl when the hail comes down.
Wait a minute. Are you saying in the book of Revelation that the seventh trumpet and seventh bowl are hail?
Yeah. There's hail and
Oh no, you didn't. What is
well,
this?
the
What
first
is?
trumpet has some too.
Okay. So what happens there?
The first trumpet?
I mean, with the hail and the seventh thing.
Oh, the seventh one?
Yeah. What do you got there?
Oh, yes.
I'm just wondering if there's some connection.
There's a lot going on. Announcements. Ark of His covenant appeared in the temple. There were flashes of lightning, peals of thunder, an earthquake, and a great hailstorm.
Interesting.
Seventh bowl. It is done. Flashes of lightning, thunder, earthquake. Blah 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 blah. City split into 3 parts. Babylon remembered. Every mountain flowed away. Huge hailstones, 100 pounds each. Which I'm not
Like
convinced.
fits in your car.
That'll crush. Imagine how fast they're going too. That's like one of those rail guns that the military has. It's launching 100-pound balls of ice. Yeah, it's like a
It sounds
meteorite.
To me like, I mean, to me that is like 2 different camera angles on the same
Yes,
scene.
right.
It could, I guess, it could happen twice, but
Seems more likely to me.
it's 2 takes on the same.
Yeah.
That's just weird.
You know, the weird part is in Revelation, kind of indeed the same type of plagues or events happen. But here, every time it says it will never happen as big ever in the entire world. And
Does it say the entire world, or does it say it will never happen in Egypt again?
no,
It
I
has
think it
not
says,
come on Egypt from the day of her founding.
and it will never be.
Well, I think it's the next verse that comes up. We'll take a look at that because it does talk about that, and we'll have to look at that. Because I know it does say something about it, but I don't know whether it's restricted to the land of Egypt or whether this will never happen again. So that would be interesting, though.
Well, it's heavy.
Yeah, So we have taken note of the house and in the field. It's an interesting metaphor used there, and I don't think it's there for no reason. Bless you. Note also the change in the actions of some Egyptians when facing this plague. What does that suggest to you? That the Egyptians What does this suggest to you, that they take action?
Well, I think this is like the beginning, because it says the one fearful of the word of Yahweh. And so we got this thing in Proverbs that fear is the beginning of wisdom.
Yes, I totally agree.
You know, in my mind, I was being younger and stuff. I was saying, God should just appear and do away with all this faith stuff. And he just appeared. Well, he didn't appear. He's done all these things. And this to me is an example of, well, it doesn't matter if he appeared in the sky everywhere at one time. We'd still have half the population go, oh, that's just BS, you know. They just still wouldn't come around. This demonstrates to me that it's like all these things have happened, and these dummies are still going, oh, I don't believe that.
The Messiah said the same thing when he was on the planet, you know, and they said, well, show us some signs and wonders. He's like,
Right.
yeah, man, you know, I could do anything. It wouldn't make any difference.
Yeah, this says even after the seventh bowl, which is like the last one, men blaspheme God because of the plague of the hail. They'll be doing it too.
Their hearts were hardened.
Yeah.
Indeed. This hardening of heart. I'm sure there's a link there too, you know, with the hardening of the heart and fighting against the power that be. And you're furious and raging against something that you can't do anything about. But it seems to me that we have some conversions here. People are being saved. That Egyptians, the nations, are turning to the Father. It's beginning with fear. Because, you know what? People have, said, well, don't turn to the Father because you want fire insurance or something. But you know what? That happens all the time. And I think that is an entirely legitimate start of your faith, is fear. If you believe that there is a Father in heaven as He is coming to judge the earth and you're afraid of that, that's a healthy fear. Now, hopefully we don't want to continue in fear that is of that nature, but you want to grow in that fear to where it becomes respect and you have faith that He's not going to destroy you, because He says that's not my plan for you. So just something to keep in mind. And I think that when Moses and the people of Israel leave Egypt, they leave with a mixed multitude. There's a bunch of Egyptians and probably people from other nations who happen to be visiting Egypt at the time that left with the Hebrews. And I think that here we're starting to see where some of these people came from. People saw this stuff and they believed. And I fully anticipate that when the judgments begin to come at the end of the age, that there will be a lot of people who are turning around and saying, boy, I really should have paid attention in Sunday school. And they're going to start, and you know what? You, my fine feathered friends, are going to be in such an amazing position to talk to those people and say, I am so glad you asked. Let me tell you what is happening and what you can do to save yourselves. And don't fall in the wilderness like the rebels did. So this is all happening for a reason, folks. So I want to move just a little bit forward to 9:22 through 26, where Yehovah says to Moses, stretch out your hand to the heavens, that hail may come to be in all the land of Egypt, on human and on beast, and on all herbage of the field in the land of Egypt. So Moses stretched out his rod to the heavens, and Yehovah, he gave thundering sounds, and hail, and fire ran earthward. Thus Yehovah rained hail over the land of Egypt, and the hail came with fire taking hold of itself in the midst of the hail, exceedingly heavy, such as had not come in all the land of Egypt since it became a nation. Now the hail smote in all the land of Egypt, and all that was in the field, from human unto beast. Also the hail smote all herbage of the field, and broke every tree of the field. But in the land of Goshen, where the sons of Israel were, no hail came. This is very interesting. Note again who and what the hail affects. Let's start with what is being affected by the hail. Humans, animals, in only the parts of Egypt, plants and trees. It says it struck all the trees of Egypt. I mean, this is already a pretty desert wasteland place. You start taking out all the green stuff, and it
But
get.
it says it wasn't back then, that's what I do.
That's certainly possible. Yeah, that it could have been more verdant at that time. Yeah, that's certainly possible. Especially along the river, yes, absolutely. But it's not, as far as I know, ever been really typically referred to as a treed place, like a forest or something. Certainly not lots of trees. I mean, there's not hardly any trees there now. I don't know, but yeah, it's not just knocking down people and animals. I mean, it's hitting crops and trees, and it's breaking up a lot of stuff.
Do you think, by the way, sorry to interrupt, but
No, I
the
encourage
hail,
it.
Is that now ice, or because it says fire as well, is it those sulfur stones? What's the name again? We're talking about?
Oh, like sulfur brimstone type stuff.
Is it brimstone?
That's an interesting idea,
Because
and
that's a translation also.
Yeah.
Yeah.
yeah, what's interesting to me, and that was my second question, is what is with this? If you read the Hebrew here in verse 24, it's a very odd description of this hail with fire taking hold of itself in the midst of the hail. It's worded really strange, like there's something mystical and weird happening here with this hail, and it's not just like chunks of ice that are on fire. I mean, that's what you see in the movie. It's 10.
Yeah, no, see, like in my dumbed down translation, it just uses the word lightning because we can understand lightning, right?
Right,
But in
right.
the movie, you're right. Fireballs come down along with the hail.
Right.
Because they wanted to do it just like that.
Right, but this actually says that hail came and there was fire taking hold of itself in the midst of the hail, which is a very odd description. And I think that when you look at some of the more interesting glorification passages in like the book of Ezekiel and the vision of the Revelation, where you have a sea of glass and fire and elements mixing that don't seem to mix, like fire and ice. This stuff is like, it doesn't make any sense. What we were talking about a couple of weeks back, where you have man and woman and Ish being fire in the midst of them, and it consumes, but in the bush that is not consumed by the fire, things that are together that shouldn't be, and they keep being together, that they should extinguish each other or cancel each other. They're mutually exclusive, but it just happens that way. I think this is a clear demonstration of the power and the divinity of this superhuman creator, Elohim. His power is known in this one somehow. I can't explain it to you, but something weird is happening here.
Description for thunder is interesting too.
It's like voices.
Yeah, yelling, calling out.
Yes.
So does
And
the Hebrews specifically say that it's ice, though? Because, I mean, hail, it's like an action, too. It's like, okay,
Well,
stuff's hailing down on us.
yeah, no, I totally, I see what you're saying, and that is an excellent question.
The
And
stones here, barat,
Bar-
hailstones.
let us take a look here. Hail,
It does say that
it says barad, and it just says hail. It doesn't give any definition.
But it doesn't it mention that it's larger and worse than it ever has fallen before?
Yeah.
it insinuates that it was something, so it would be odd if there was, every once in a while stones fall out of the sky.
Yeah.
I mean,
Well,
it would be a
this
natural occurring thing.
this word for hail, this is the first time it appears in the Torah.
Hey, you guys remember when that comet,
Exploded over
hit
Russia? Yeah.
The sound it made,
Oh yeah.
thunder,
Blow out the windows and such.
hailstones, fire, I mean, that pretty much covers that whole, the noise, the fire.
Oh yeah. That's an interesting
Oh.
observation.
I
I mean, it would have been a frozen ball of something that is on fire and also explodes. That's a very interesting observation.
Yeah, because that debris just comes down and
Was this a meteor shower?
Or, well, it wouldn't, if it was ice, it would have to be a comet.
It never says ice.
Exploding.
It says hail.
Right, that's-
And for hail, I mean,
Us thinking
is-
hail is ice balls is just.
Yeah.
What we.
Well, the thing is if you look in the Hebrew, that in the Brown Driver Briggs or the Strongs, it doesn't give you a definition. It just says hail, because this is the first time, and it's not used very frequently in the Torah at all.
Probably like Sodom and Gomorrah and those things, because they have found those sulfur balls. I know it's weird.
Yeah, but that word is not used in this. It's not the same word.
No.
This word that we are reading here is only used in Exodus chapters 9 and 10, except Joshua chapter 10 and Job chapter 38. But this is the first time that it's used in the text at all? Okay, so Joshua chapter 10, verse 11, it says, "And it came to pass as they fled from before Israel and were in the going down to Beth Horon, that Yahweh cast down great stones from heaven upon them unto Azekah, and they died." So this is a battle that is happening with Joshua invading the land of Canaan. Now this says great stones. Now this is a different word. It actually says eben, which is what we know as the Hebrew word for stone, but this is not the same word that is used here. I think this must be a relation to, they're relating it to something falling from the sky, but this word, barad, is not used anywhere else. It just says hail. They don't know how to define it.
What about in Sodom and Gomorrah? How do they call it there? Because those are also things.
Yeah, that's a good question. Does anybody have that off the top of your head about where that is happening in Genesis? Is that like chapter 10 maybe? No, not quite.
We're in like 20.
Is it chapter 20?
Yeah, it's 19. Chapter 19.
Because it talks about a lot.
1912.
They came to Sodom. Okay, so now he's tarried in all night, and you're about to get accosted by some perverts. Okay, let's see. Take my daughters, destroy this place. When they left the city, they mocked. And he lingered, and they grabbed him. And it came to pass, look behind you, plain Lot.
There it is, 24. Verse
24. Rained upon Sodom and Gomorrah brimstone. That is gofrit. Gofrit. Different word. Also the first time that word is used. Very interesting. Apparently not related to what is happening here. But that was an interesting observation, though. It did make me think of that as well, with the brimstone coming down that's on fire. But I mean, I like the idea of the comet or the meteorite or whatever, or I don't know, giant hailstones that have fire in the middle of them. I don't know, man. It's kind of weird. Interesting, though.
That piece in verse 24.
Yes.
Since it became a nation. That seemed like unnecessary text there.
Going back a long ways.
So, does it imply that this happened before they became a nation?
I wouldn't have gone there, but I see that you have, and now I'm. No, that's.
I guess I was just looking for the sentence to end in the land of Egypt.
Yeah, in the land of Egypt.
Since it became a nation.
Since it became a nation. So, yeah, maybe did it happen before? I don't know. That's a good question. Taking us back, is this a judgment against a god of Egypt? Well, I do have Nut, or Nut, however you want to say that, the sky god, and Set, the storm god. They had never seen their god.
Cat and some god. I mean, that's the thing.
Oh, they had over 1,300 gods in ancient Egypt. They got a god for everything.
Cat.
If you need anything, or you're having a problem with anything, there is a god for that. A saint. There's a saint for that. Don't go there. Our Catholic friends are in the middle of Lent. They're going to hear this and call us blasphemers. No, it's kind of funny. We were actually being questioned by a Catholic today about, are you guys doing Lent? You guys have saints? That was kind of interesting. Belly button lens. Oh, that's disgusting. So, yes, in all likelihood, this would have been considered a judgment against one of the gods of Egypt. But it seems to be so much more than that. This is a really interesting plague. I'm going to move forward a little bit here to 9:27 through 35. And it says, Pharaoh sent and called for Moshe and for Aharon and said to them, I have sinned this time. Yehovah is the righteous one, and I and my people are the wicked. Make an entreaty to Yehovah, for this is enough of there coming to be thundering sounds of Elohim and hail. Let me dismiss you. You shall not continue to stay. Moses said to him, As I go forth from the city, I shall spread my palms to Yehovah, and the thundering sounds shall halt, and the hail shall come no longer, so that you may know that the earth is Yehovah's. As for you and your servants, I know that you are not yet fearing because of the presence of Yehovah Elohim. And the flax and the barley were smitten, for the barley was pollinated, and the flax was in pod. Yet the wheat and the spelt were not smitten, for they were in blade. When Moses went from Pharaoh, from the city, and he spread his palms to Yehovah, and the thundering sounds halted, and the hail and the rain was not poured forth earthward. Now Pharaoh saw that the rain, the hail, and the thundering sounds had halted, yet he continued to sin and made his heart glory, he and his servants. So the heart of Pharaoh was steadfast, and he did not dismiss the sons of Israel, just as Yehovah had spoken by means of Moses. What sin is Pharaoh confessing here? He says, I have sinned. Yehovah is the righteous one, and I and my people are wicked. He seems like he's confessing to some sin. What sin is he confessing?
Not believing.
His unbelief, disobedience, his pride,
False gods.
possibly worshiping of false gods. Yeah.
The only weird thing is if you say, I have sinned, I thought that was a weird word, and if you look at sinned, there for whatever reason, unless I misunderstand, it also means repented. If you read it, I have repented this time.
That would be unusual, wouldn't it?
Because then he starts to sin again. First he says, I repented. So, okay, you guys are right. And at the end, he hardened his heart again, so now he's going to sin again. Circumcision.
Interesting. Does anybody else see
Well,
that?
that word repent, you know how you're supposed to do that word repented, maybe that's his way of, he's admitting that he was wrong.
Correct.
So that, to him, that's a big repentance right there.
Yeah.
I have sinned, chata, to sin, miss the way, miss the mark, go wrong, incur guilt, forfeit, purify from uncleanness. Are you looking at the right Hebrew word? 2398?
2398 also further then talks about indeed about sin and purify, cleans,
Do you?
reconciliation.
I don't see those definitions anywhere
I see
in.
that in Strong's.
Oh, the Strong's definition. Okay, so well.
The list is so big it can mean anything.
I see what you're saying. Yeah, so a primitive root properly to miss. Well, I know that we've heard, probably all of us, that sin is to aim at the bullseye and miss. you miss the mark.
I think it says in verse 17, if you back up, Moses tells him, you still exalt yourself against my people by not letting them go. And when Pharaoh says, I have sinned,
He's referring to that.
I haven't let your people go.
And it says, well, up to the end.
Well, yes, and I think that's that's a good indication, because immediately after he says that, he says, "Let me dismiss you, that you shall not continue to stay." So that is clearly, I think, what he seems to be saying. I have sinned in not doing what Yehovah told me specifically to do through his prophet. I mean, what have we been hearing this whole time? Let my people go.
But then God keeps hardening his heart, so when you go, man, I want to let him go, but
This
for
time
some
he
reason I
doesn't.
just can't.
This time he does it himself.
He does what himself?
Well, it sounds like it.
Yeah,
It
you're
says he.
Well, it says that he hardened his own heart.
He sinned and hardened his heart.
His
Yeah.
own heart, right.
Yeah,
That's what it
sounds
says
like
in this
he's trying to do
passage.
it himself.
Well, we have a couple passages where it seems like he's hardening his own heart, and we have a couple passages where it seems like Yehovah is hardening his heart. So there's some, tension at play here.
We thought those rocks were cool.
Yeah. Well, it seems, and it's interesting, it's like the thundering sounds of Elohim. If you look at that in the Hebrew, it's like he's talking about almost like voices from heaven. That he's somehow interpreting these thunders as voices. And there could be an interpretation which suggests that this is like the voice of the Father coming from heaven. I don't know, but you've seen that before probably in the scriptures where thunder is related as the voice. So he seems to be repenting of the one action that he has been told repeatedly by the prophet of Elohim, let the people go. And he is saying, I repent, I have sinned, I'm going to let you go. So I think that that's specifically what he's talking about. Now, is this genuine repentance? Obviously not, because he did not dismiss the sons of Israel right at the end of this section. Interesting relation that I think bears looking into a little bit further. If you look at the book of James, look at the book of James chapter 1. Verse 5. Remember what Mike said a moment ago? What is the beginning of wisdom? Fear of Yehovah is the beginning of wisdom. Right here in the beginning of James, in verse 5, it says, if any of you lack wisdom, let him ask of Elohim, who gives to all men generously and without reproach, and it shall be given to him. But let him ask in faith without wavering, for the one who wavers is like a wave of the sea driven and tossed by the wind, and that man should not expect that he will receive anything from Yehovah, because he is a double-minded man and is unstable in all of his ways. I think that this is a genuine example of what James is calling a double-minded man. He is speaking with his mouth, saying, I have sinned. Let me dismiss you. You will not continue to stay. And as soon as the trial, the voices, the thunder, the lightning, the hail goes away, he changes his mind. He has when the fear is gripping him, or the passion is gripping him for a moment here, he is serious. But in his heart, he really wants to do his own thing. And as soon as he gets an opportunity, he rebels again. So this is what I believe that James is talking about perfectly in the book of James, saying, do not be a double-minded man. Do not come to the Father and say, oh, Yehovah, help me with this. Guide me, when you really have no intention of listening to his wisdom. You're going to do what you want to do regardless of what he says. That, to me, is a double-minded man, and I think Pharaoh is pointing this out in a beautiful way. Ani?
Yeah, I have the thought also with this plague, Yehovah for the first time kind of personally reveals himself through the thunder, which is the voice, through the fire, which is also a symbol. God revealed himself in the burning bush as a fire. It has many, many scriptures where it talks about fire.
Absolutely.
And it refers to the presence of Yahweh. So that's why it's also so powerful. And that's why for the first time Pharaoh is really scared, or he really, for the first time, he's not yet really convinced. Like you say, he changes his mind, but
Right.
he is kind of...
He's wavering.
Right, he's wavering.
He seems to me to be genuinely afraid of the sounds coming from
Right.
heaven. And if that's just lightning somehow, I mean, I've seen lightning bolts drop pretty close to the house here. We got some nice desert thunderstorms where, it's interesting, and you can hear thunder, and when it hits really close and it's really big and really loud, that can be frightening. But I don't know that that's what this is talking about exactly. It could be. But it almost seems like there's something more there, and he's afraid of the voice of Elohim and the thunders or something. But that's an interesting observation. Now, I wanted to just take note of this, and Mike and I had discussed this in relation to this parenthetical statement here that says that the flax and the barley were beaten down by this hail because they were pollinated and the flax was in the pod, but the wheat and the spelt were not beaten down because they were in the blade. What do you mean? What do you think? What do you understand this to mean with in the pollinated and in the pod versus not smitten because they were in the blade? What do you think is going on there?
Well, it says in my text that the second part of it is because they are late crops. It doesn't say they were in the blade, so I took it as they weren't yet.
Interesting observation, because the Hebrew text does seem to indicate late. Now, we had a question, Mike and I were discussing this earlier, that is this because this is a crop that rises later? Well, Mike was doing some research and saw that the spelt is a winter crop, which is planted in the early fall and the reaping happens about now, right? So
and the word that says late here, when you look at the Hebrew word, it's not ripe, not grown.
and if you look at the Brown Driver Briggs, that word late also can mean hidden or revealed or concealed. That's very interesting.
And that all seems to be different than late.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Right.
more meaning.
There's definitely some more meaning that it was late, but whether that's a crop that comes later, because we were looking at the timing of it. I mean, what is going on? Winter wheat, yeah, it's possible the winter wheat in the desert, but we were just looking at the timing of that, and I don't know why that's just stuck in there. I'm sure it's for I'm sure it's not for no reason, but remember also that if the barley and the flax were beaten down, what are the significance of those crops, flax and barley? Keith?
Because they're springtime crops, so it gives you an idea when this happened.
Okay.
Priest's clothing.
What?
Wasn't the priest's clothing, yeah?
Well, yes, flax is used for the priest's clothing, linen. That's how you make linen, is with flax. And embalming and wrapping mummies. You need yards of that linen cloth in order to wrap a body for purification, for burial. And you guys know about these elaborate Egyptian burial rituals where they, put stuff in the tomb and they wrap them up and put them in a sarcophagus, and it's supposed to, grant them eternal life. And when they wake up, they'll have their stuff with them. What is Yehovah demonstrating here by just wiping out the flax crop? What is he depriving them of?
Their
Eternal life.
Eternal life. Yes. He is saying you do not get eternal life because you build yourself a fancy tomb and wrap yourself in linen. I grant eternal life. Your
It
God's.
also mean for he was pointing a little bit. At least that's what I thought for the next crop. Not everything is destroyed. We had a small portion maybe of Israelites that now start to believe, and now you have a few crops left that don't believe in Him. Well, we need to destroy it as well, or show them, hey.
Well, that's one of the.
how powerful Yahweh is.
Yeah, that is one of the things that Mike and I had discussed is whether. Well, we do know that barley is we believe, and many do believe, that barley is the crop that is ripe at the time of the Exodus, and that they had unleavened bread cakes that they're taking with them because they didn't have time for the bread to rise. Is that made out of barley? And if all the barley is destroyed here, how do they have barley to be taken off on their journey when this next couple of plagues is coming up? Again, we have a couple of different options. Either A, they had barley in the land of Goshen because the hail didn't fall there, or more time is passing than we had previously thought or presumed to be the case. That there could be another whole crop cycle that's coming here between these 7th and 8th plagues, perhaps. Or at least between the 7th and 10th. Angela?
I don't know what the connection is here, but I noticed, okay, before that, I got you. Well, first of all, when you're talking about thunder, and the 7 thunders happened before that 7th trumpet. I mean, yeah, the one where the hailstorm Okay. And then this one where the hail comes, it burns up the green grass. And then that thing you just showed us in James, if you read on, it talks about
The rich
pride,
man
the rich
and-
man,
yeah.
the flowering grass passes away. And
Yep. So what are you inferring?
I don't know.
Oh, what are you making? Can you? What is there any link that you're seeing there? Note again the links that you see,
It's the thing about the grass.
because here we have crops of the field being beaten down, and in the book of Revelation we have what? A third of the grass burned up.
No, it's a third of the trees, a third of the earth, and all the green grass
Interesting.
burned up. And here we have the sun coming up and withering the grass.
And this is which one of the plagues in Revelation?
This one's the first trumpet with the grass.
And this is also immediately after the seven thunders, which are hidden.
No, the seventh trumpet comes after the seven thunders.
Okay. But of course you're overlaying them, I presume.
But these trumpets seem to all have this stuff in them.
Okay.
I don't know what it means.
Well, that's obviously pretty deep stuff, and it could be severely significant, but also very mysterious. And so I encourage you to do more personal study on that. I am not prepared to comment on the book of Revelation necessarily.
They said that it would probably be in February when that happened, because that's when all the stuff would have been ripe and
Yeah,
Green.
turning green. Yeah.
Yeah, mine says was in ear,
Mhm,
right, or
mhm.
Eve.
Yeah, that's the Hebrew word is Abib, which is the month of Abib when the Passover happens. So something's going on here. So you'll have to consider that. And like we said, there are a couple of different options. I'm going to move forward just a little bit. Chapter 10, verse 1. So Yahweh said to Moses, "Enter to Pharaoh, for I have made his heart glory." Now this is interesting because this is directly attributing Yahweh saying, "I have made Pharaoh's heart glory, and the hearts of his servants, that I may set these my signs among them, and that you may relate in the ears of your son and your son's son that which I set in action in Egypt, and my signs which I placed among them, that you will know that I am Yahweh." So Moses and Aaron entered to Pharaoh and said to him, "Thus says Yahweh, Elohim of the Hebrews, how long will you refuse to be humbled because of my presence? Dismiss my people that they may serve me. For if you refuse to dismiss my people, behold me bringing the locust swarm tomorrow into your boundary, and it will cover the eye of the land, so that none can see the land, and it will eat the delivered leavings, whatever remained for you from the hail. It will eat every tree which is sprouting for you from the field. Your houses will be full, and the houses of all your servants, and the houses of all the Egyptians, such as your fathers and your fathers' fathers had not seen, from the day they came to be on the ground until this day." Then he turned around and went forth from Pharaoh. Now the servants of Pharaoh said to him, "How long shall this man become a trap to us? Dismiss the men, that they may serve you, of their Elohim. Do you not yet know that Egypt is perishing?" When Moses and Aaron were brought back to Pharaoh, he said to them, "Go, serve Yahweh your Elohim." Who are going?" And Moses said, "With our young and our old we shall go. With our sons and our daughters and our flocks and our herds we shall go. For it is a celebration of Yahweh." And then he said to him, "So let Yahweh be with you if ever I dismiss you and your little ones. Discern that evil is in front of your faces. Not so. Go now, just the men of mastery, and serve Yahweh, for it is what you are seeking." So they drove them out from the presence of Pharaoh. Interesting dialogue happening here. We have some more of Pharaoh twisting things up and putting a little temptation in front of Moses. Notice the contrast here that Yahweh is saying. Saying among the Hebrews, it seems to me, He's telling Moses to go and tell Pharaoh what he's about to do, but he's telling Moses so that you may relate it to your son and your son's sons, what I did in the land of Egypt. And then a little bit later, he says, your houses will be full of all these bugs, and the locusts will be everywhere, such as your fathers and fathers' fathers had not seen. Notice the contrast there, where he's talking about the sons and the sons' sons of the Hebrews and the fathers and the fathers' fathers of the Egyptians. What do you make of that? There's a contrast here, and it's an interesting one, I think. What are they all noticing? What are the sons and the sons' sons going to be relating for a long time? And what are we going back into history with the fathers and the fathers' fathers of the Egyptians noting? What are we taking note of?
How amazing this thing is.
How amazing these locusts are. Now, we know what locusts are, right? You know what a locust is? Some people don't. I'm just checking. Huh? Have you seen locusts?
I hit on motorcycle. Let's get to that.
Well, we don't call them locusts here. What do we call them?
Grasshoppers.
They're grasshoppers.
Probably bigger.
They're good. They're good size. Yeah. You know that they're actually kosher.
Yep.
You can eat
They
it.
hop. Bugs that hop are kosher.
That's right.
I eat
Where'd
them all
you
the
read
time.
this?
Chocolate?
It's in the list of foods in Leviticus.
In Leviticus?
And hopping is the definition of what makes them kosher.
Yeah.
They're not crawlers,
Crickets,
they're
too.
hoppers. And they can fly on them.
Crickets, too.
There's something I'd have to read that again. There's something about the way the leg bends. There literally is. It's just kind of weird. But this is a kosher insect. You can eat these. Not that I recommend it, but this is supposedly, now I don't know if you had seen this, but I actually saw something that was very interesting on the internet, and this was during the time of the Dust Bowl, when things were going really crazy in the Midwest in the early part of this century, the last century, excuse me. There was pictures, like a sequence of pictures, and you could probably find this. There was a little farmhouse, and there was grass and trees and a little picket fence and a little house. It had, screens on the windows and some patio furniture. And then it was like, apparently the pictures didn't develop or turn out because it was black. It was just black. And then the next photo in the sequence shows the grass was gone. Every green leaf on the tree was gone. The screens on the window were woven fiber, gone. The patio furniture were covered in some type of cloth or cotton, gone. A horde of locusts had come through this farm and just denuded everything. I mean, ate the screens off the house and the patio furniture and all the leaves and all the grass. It was like something had just stripped it completely bare. I had never seen anything like that. And that was not something that was really huge. This is like so huge that it talks about the eye of the land. This is a massive, massive storm of insects that just devour everything. And I think some of the language that is used here, talking about it will eat the delivered leavings. It's like the remnant. What I had left over for you that I did not allow the hail to destroy, I left you a remnant to preserve you. But now if you will not listen, I will send the locust which will eat everything. Now again, we're going to have a problem with this because how do the Israelites have some stuff? But it doesn't say that there were no locusts in the land of Goshen. It may. We'll have to look as we move forward a little bit, but there's certainly something interesting. And you can also relate this back to the book of the Revelation, where there is a plague of creatures, isn't there? Like locusts coming out of the pit, and these are demonic locusts or something.
Joel talks about locusts pretty specifically, and he goes through 4 different kinds that completely, the stripping locusts is left.
The other one comes for, there's like a series of locusts in the book of Joel. Yeah, very interesting.
So this seems like this happened pretty near to each other. Like the one where with the hail and the mist, or
This does seem to indicate that not much time has passed, yes.
They have
Whatever's left over from the previous one, yeah. In this case, what's that?
It's tomorrow.
Well, we don't know when Moses went in, so I bet, yeah, it seems like in this case for sure, it doesn't seem like a lot of time has passed since the time the hail came.
So maybe the significance of that is that he basically saw hailstones fall and could let a year go by, but God said, well, wait a minute, you just repented, now you just turned back on that again, so boom, hit you again.
That might, yeah, and you remember if you go back to that, is this one of the third in the series? This one is given a warning, so it's not one of the third in the series, but it's almost like, huh? This is number 8, so this is like a punishment. Now the next one will come with no warning. So this is certainly interesting. Now, would this judgment of locusts represent the destruction of some Egyptian deity or deities? Is that what do you see there? Anything significant?
Well, this goes back to your flack and all that crap too.
Flack?
Flax.
Oh, the flax.
Yeah.
Yes.
Eat all that. So that's
Right.
before
So
that.
yeah, I think that definitely you can relate it right back to the previous one, just because it's destroying the crops.
And ISIS, Seth, is also protected from the crops.
You mean flack, dude.
Yeah. Yes, their Egyptian Isis god. Yes, absolutely, absolutely. Notice this third temptation by Pharaoh. Go and leave Egypt, but yeah, just the men. What? Now this is a temptation. Is that a temptation? You're going to leave Egypt and leave your family behind, and just the men go and serve?
Well, then they can have more children.
Yeah, obviously you're not leaving. You're coming back to slavery.
So he throws out another compromise to see if they'll bite.
Yeah, he's thrown out it doesn't seem like as much of a temptation, but I think that yeah, it's like an anchor to keep you here. So I don't know what principle necessarily you could pull out of that and relate it to, your current time, but I have heard some pastors say things like, you can't serve the Father and neglect your family, which I think is a valid point. I think that's a valid observation.
And it's the second time that it happens with the genocide of the male
Yes.
babies.
Yes.
With the
Right.
pharaohs, but it was another pharaoh, right?
Yeah. Yes. That was the previous. That was the previous pharaoh who had died, and then Moses returned. Yes. But it's interesting that they were threatening the children of the Hebrews with death, and the only Hebrew child that we know of who was actually put into the water is Moses. So there's some irony there for sure.
Maybe the temptation was not to worship God the way that he was wanting it done, because it says that Moses said, we will go with our young, with our old, with our sons, and with our daughters. We will go with our flocks, and with our herds, for it's a feast of Jehovah to us. So this is how God wants this feast observed with everybody. And Pharaoh's saying, well, you can just use this part to worship your God.
Oh, yeah. Trying to corrupt the intent. Yeah, I think that's an excellent observation that if the Father says, I want you to worship me this way, and you say, well, I'm going to worship you that way, or I'll do it part way, or something like that. Yeah, that's a corruption of worship. So that would have been an attempt. That's an excellent observation for how that might relate to today, to corrupted worship. Yeah, I like that. That's interesting. I think we've already discussed about why this judgment would have been especially onerous to the Egyptians because of the flax and the clothing, the cloth, the priestly garments made out of linen and stuff like that. I'm moving forward a little bit to chapter 10, verses 12 through 20. It says that Jehovah said to Moses, stretch out your hand over the land of Egypt for the locust, that it may ascend over the land of Egypt and devour all the herbage of the land and all the fruit of the trees which the hail has let remain. So Moses stretched out his rod over the land of Egypt, and Jehovah drove an east wind into the land all that day and all the night. The morning came, and the east wind carried the locust swarm along. Then the locust swarm ascended over all the land of Egypt, and it rested within the entire boundary of Egypt, exceedingly heavy. Before it there had not come to be a locust swarm so great as it, and after it none shall come to be so. It covered the eye of all the land, and the land was darkened. And it devoured all the herbage of the land and all the fruit of the trees which the hail had left, so that no green at all was left on the trees, nor on the herbage of the field in all the land of Egypt. Now Pharaoh hastened to call for Moses and for Aaron, and said, I have sinned against Jehovah your Elohim and against you. And now I pray, bear with my sin only this time, and make an entreaty to Jehovah your Elohim, that he may take away from over me this death. So Moses went forth from Pharaoh and entreated Jehovah. Then Jehovah turned an exceedingly steadfast sea wind, or west wind, and it carried away the locust swarm and blew it into the sea of weeds. Not one locust remained within the entire boundary of Egypt. Yet Jehovah made the heart of Pharaoh steadfast, so that he did not dismiss the sons of Israel. If we look at this plague, the timing of this plague, with the fact that we know that the children of Israel will soon leave with unleavened cakes, how can we make sense of this? We've talked about this a little bit, whether maybe the locust did not invade the land of Goshen, or perhaps that more time has passed. We'll have to look at the coming verses to see what kind of time indicators we have.
Well, you gotta remember the barley was of Eve, and in the land of Goshen, maybe they had already harvested and had some barley stashed away already.
Okay, yeah, that's an interesting observation.
Yeah, this crop could be for the coming year, and they've already had grain from the previous.
Sure, yeah, absolutely, because there would have been a remainder from the previous year before they were harvesting. Yeah, absolutely, good observation. How would you relate this phrasing of every green thing with Revelation chapter 9, verse 4? Is there a link here? Oh, I see that look on your
no,
face.
I was just starting to look at this and think that in the spirit of being Susie, that these are like parables
Parables.
to understanding some of the figurative language in, because here it literally, I think, is every green thing, but I don't know if it is.
Well, let's take a look just for a moment at the book of Revelation in chapter 9, verse 4. If you look at Revelation chapter 9, verse 4, it says, and it was declared to them that they should not be injuring the grass of the earth, nor any green thing,
Basically, they're not locusts.
nor any tree except those of mankind who have not the seal of Elohim on their foreheads. Who is being instructed here?
Well, if you contrast, except those who do not have the seal, with grass of the earth, green thing, or any tree, it sounds like the grass of the earth and the green things are the ones who have the seal of God on their foreheads. Obviously, here we're not talking about locusts, because they would be eating every green thing, and grass and the trees and all that.
Well, it says in the verse 3, if you back up, it says, out of these fumes that came out, locusts into the earth, and license was granted them as the scorpions of the earth have license or power. So these are these demonic locusts with the tails of scorpions who are about to inflict some havoc. And it says that it was declared to them that they should not be injuring the grass of the earth. And so you're taking that to be a parable.
But you took the description of the being as literal, which I think you have to be
The
careful
locust.
to do.
So you would take the locust in Revelation as a metaphor for something else.
Mhm.
What would you take that as a metaphor for?
I don't know. But I don't think it's
What,
literally
the locusts?
teeth of a lion.
Those are black Apache helicopters.
Did you see the movie? Those are black Apache helicopters. I like that. That's a good one, buddy.
But it clearly says locust, but indeed it is so big, if you look at it from afar, then it looks like a scorpion.
Yeah, I mean, try to picture in your head a locust with hair of a woman, teeth of a lion, tail of a. You're starting to get a little Picasso thing going on in the imagination. I think that's figurative and it's meaning.
Yeah, but it says clearly, don't you always want to take it literal if you can take it literal? If it says locust, then it is locust.
In
I don't think so in this book.
In Revelation,
In Revelation.
especially in Revelation as well.
Well,
Or not.
she's thinking that it's symbolic of something else.
Because it is a symbolism of something from the smallest ingredients, the locust. Or do I see that wrong? You know so much more
What's the
about it.
actual locust? What a locust does, it comes in and it decimates.
I think, yes, you're supposed to learn, like Andy Instincts would say, look at nature and learn the pattern or learn the behavior so you can apply it to the figurative language.
Right.
Because if you look at all these books about the end times, I mean, when they say, he talks about locusts in Joel, and he switches from talking about the locust gnawing and creeping and you get the idea, these locusts, this is a group, this is someone.
A group of people?
Yeah, this is not actual bugs here.
Sorry if that's incorrect.
That's a Michael Root teaching where he thinks John saw the Apache helicopters. They've got all their armament on them and they strike like a locust.
Well, that's certainly
That's
it's an interesting observation.
I think those characteristics that are listed are I think they're more revealing of the nature of it.
Yeah.
Sure.
Function
Okay.
or
Because they're just going to
what
come
it
through and
does.
decimate whatever they
Like
use
this.
in their pack.
Separate those up.
Those 50 cal.
Yeah. Well, so I'm going to wrap up here in just a moment, but I wanted you to take note, if you're taking notes, just take a note of the mention of an east wind and see if you can find other see if you can find other references to an east wind. Do you already have one in mind?
just when I watch the news,
Just when I watch the news.
east wind, locusts, destroying everything in their path. I don't know.
Okay, all right. Well, hey, I'm not throwing anything out there. I'm just saying, consider an east wind and what that might represent, and look at places in the Torah or the prophets or the writings that might describe an east wind and see what you find. And I might put that on the slide for next week that we can kind of review. Some people would see that as an ISIS type of thing. Yeah, that's certainly possible. And note again also that Pharaoh is continuing to repent with his mouth, but not his actions. He is continuing to say, I have sinned and I've done wrong, but he continues to do what is wrong. He's
This one
confessing.
specifically says too against God and against.
And against you, yeah.
The last one I looked for my thing is just I have sinned. You know,
Right.
David.
Now he's being a little more specific, but he's continuing to repent with his mouth. You wouldn't really call that repentance. You would call that confession. He says he's sorry when he's not, because he wants something. Are you relating that to men in general? You just back off, lady.
Funny, I didn't.
All right, you're funny. I'm moving forward to the end of this chapter. This is chapter 10, verses 21 through 29. I am dyslexic. Yehovah said to Moses, "Stretch out your hand to the heavens, and let a darkness come on the land of Egypt, so that the darkness may cause them to grope." Then Moses stretched out his hand to the heavens, and gloomy darkness came to be in all the land of Egypt for 3 days. No one saw his brother, and no one rose from the place beneath him for 3 days. Yet all the sons of Israel came to have light in their dwellings. Now Pharaoh called for Moses and Aaron and said, "Go, serve Yehovah your Elohims, but your flocks and your herds shall be made to stay put. However, your little ones may go with you." And Moses said, "You moreover should give sacrifices and ascent offerings into our hand, that we may make them to Yehovah our Elohim. And even our cattle shall go with us, not a hoof shall remain, for from them shall we take to serve Yehovah our Elohim, for we do not know what we shall serve Yehovah with until we come there." Yet Yehovah made the heart of Pharaoh steadfast, and he did not comply so as to dismiss them. So Pharaoh said to them, "Go away from me. Guard yourself. Do not continue to see my face, for in the day you see my face you shall die." And hence Moses said, "Properly you have spoken. No further shall I continue to see your face." You said it. Darkness. Obviously, you can relate this to some Egyptian god, most notably Ra, the sun god, who is being defeated with complete darkness. And I don't enjoy, but I think that the description of the darkness here is pretty profound. It seems to be, some of your translations may say a darkness so thick that you can feel it. That's I have actually tried this experiment with my children to try to find the darkest spot in the house and block out all the light and stick them in there so that they can experience real. It is actually frightening. I don't know if you guys have ever been in a situation like that, but in the woods, yeah. If you've been in, they have caverns, and I agree. I mean, when I was a young man, they had these mines out in the desert here, and we had kids who would take flashlights and go hundreds of feet into the heart of the earth, and that is freaky, and it is so dark that it's frightening.
When I used to teach photography, I would take my class, and we had a room just for film. And in a film, it's not a red light; it's complete darkness, complete, like can't see your hand, that kind of darkness. And it's funny because after a few years, I would stop going in there with them their first time, and I would tell them, go in there, shut the door, lock the thing. And within 2 minutes...
Did you making out?
No. The rule was it had to be an odd number in there, but I know it doesn't work anymore.
What?
But the noise level would just go, you'd have kids in there that would yell at the top of their lungs and be singing by the time everyone got their film done. I think this was a way of trying to make that, because it was so uncomfortable for them, they were trying to make up for the lack of sight with yelling. And I would just be in the classroom going.
Yeah, being in a situation that is real darkness is really unnerving. It's kind of strange, huh?
Bring your doctor.
Yeah, seriously, it's kind of frightening. Notice here the fourth and final temptation of Moses by Pharaoh, saying, go, but don't take your animals with you. What is the significance there?
No, I can't say.
Serve your Elohim as long as it doesn't cost you anything.
It seems like there might be a struggle going on here too, where God's knocking out all of his gods, and he's like trying to knock out all of the rituals that God is presenting to, that they need to follow, and he's like trying to
Detract from it a little bit.
I wonder if he looked at the pattern, if his next response after Pharaoh tries to make a compromise, if his next response is somehow related to the compromise Pharaoh tried to get them.
Interesting. Yeah, interesting.
Yeah, you think of the little ones if the next one is.
You notice this weird verse 25? Does your verse 25 read differently than mine? Because it says that Moses said to Pharaoh, you also should give sacrifices and ascent offerings into our hand that we may take them to you of our Elohim. He actually seems to be saying to Pharaoh, you should give us stuff to sacrifice to our Elohim.
Animals, because he's out of animals.
It says you must also give us sacrifices and burnt offerings that we may sacrifice to the Lord our God.
That's Moses talking to Pharaoh.
Yes, mine just says you must allow us to take our animals for sacrifices and burnt offerings to make to Yahweh and our own.
So yours is a little different. What does yours say?
You must.
So this is Moses speaking to Pharaoh saying, you must give us sacrifices to make to Yahweh. So he seems to be demanding of Pharaoh stuff to sacrifice to Yahweh. I thought that sticks out like a sore thumb. Not only is he saying, you must let us go, but you must give us stuff to sacrifice to Yahweh. Does that actually happen?
Yes.
Yes, it does.
And they also raid them.
They plundered the Egyptians. And they make a golden calf with it. Yes, they do. That's an interesting. What is there some connection there? something happening there, that he's demanding that Pharaoh give sacrifice. In a weird way, it actually works out that the Hebrews plunder the Egyptians and then use that plunder to make a golden calf. It's kind of interesting. Something to consider.
So like it's tainted or something?
That's almost like it's tainted or something. Yes, like the gift that was given was tainted.
Or they took more than they needed. Because it didn't have to be a plunder. They could have taken what they.
Well, God, yeah, Elohim said. Yeah, Elohim said when he was instructing Moses to go there, when they leave, they will plunder the Egyptians.
Oh. Well, he's also hardening people's hearts to see what's going on too. So
True,
it's all
true.
part of the lesson, I think.
True. Does Moses see Pharaoh again after this final threat? Yes, he does.
Yeah, that's weird.
One more time. He calls for Moses in the middle of the night and says, "Get out. Leave." And he's got a dead son. It's interesting.
But it's weird because he says, "For do not continue to see my face, for in the day you see my face, you shall die."
You shall die. Only it's reversed. It's flipped. Because when he calls for Moses next, his own son is dead, and he's saying, "Get out."
Little black humor.
Little dark humor there. Yeah. So, very interesting. That is what we have, folks. That is the end of the show.
One other thing, we kind of briefly talked about this darkness being related to
Spiritual darkness?
in Genesis.
Oh, the darkness of creation. Yes, absolutely. Like,
And it's interesting because it says it'll be for 3 days.
mhm.
And then, yet, to all the sons of Israel there was light in their dwelling. And like when you read through Genesis, he separates the light and the dark, right? But you don't really have the luminaries until the 4th day. So this is...
If you have 3 days of darkness, on the 4th day, the light arrives. It's just like in the creation.
So darkness is more than just dark.
Right.
It's a spiritual darkness of some type.
And that's why it says it could be felt.
Very interesting.
Yeah.
And darkness, spiritual darkness is what?
No Yahweh.
Chaos, no Father, no understanding, lawlessness. Yes, yeah. Interesting observations.
I have
Yes,
one
sir.
more question. Is there significance for that the first 3 plagues was done through Aaron? You know, we spoke just briefly about it in the beginning, and then the rest was all through Moses. And then the last one, number 9, he lifts his hands up, and number 10 just happens, because that's the last plague. But is there a reason that Aaron first does the first 3, or through Aaron?
Well, let me ask you a question. Is there a reason that Aaron does the first 3?
I don't know.
I want you to tell me.
The
No,
only thing that for he's a prophet, it is defined that.
Wait, I missed it. What was said?
No, I just said I have an idea, but go ahead, John.
Oh no, I'd love to hear your idea. Your idea is probably better than mine. Like this.
No.
What's your idea?
I was just thinking that in the beginning that Moses, kept saying, I'm, unable to do these things, and that confidence lacked, or I don't know what all was going on inside of him, but
Right.
maybe as this thing got going, maybe he did gain that, he saw God had his back, was there doing these things, and maybe, I don't know.
Oh, that's interesting. That the first 3 plagues being enacted by Aaron was also to strengthen the faith of Moses. That's an interesting idea. I like that.
His strength comes from faith, not from God hardening his heart. Because if you just harden his heart like he did Pharaoh, so he has to have his brother come in and do it
Yeah.
through example, and then faith in that.
Interesting.
It's a different way of going.
Yeah, I
Well,
like
Yahweh
that.
even told Moses, "I'm going to have your brother help you." When he was at the bush, he said, "I can't do this. I'm going to get your brother."
It's interesting that he did the first 3 and then Moses did the next ones, or at least some of them, most of them. That maybe that was a jump start for Moses's confidence. That's
And
a,
then
it's
the
an
last one,
interesting.
he doesn't even need his staff.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
He doesn't use the same.
He doesn't use his
He
staff.
raises his arms to heaven.
Right, right. And then, of course, with the 10th, there's a whole separate kind of deal. So that's an interesting idea. I like that, Sierra. It could certainly be that this is a jump start for Moses' faith to see his brother, backing him up. Good idea. Good as idea of any as any. I like it. Let us pray and we'll wrap up and have some snacks.